Welcome to the Intuitive Websites Internet Marketing Podcast, bringing you the country's top podcast on the subject of internet marketing. Welcome to the Intuitive Websites Internet Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Glenn Thayer, and today we're going to discuss website content that drives conversions. I'm here with the CEO of Intuitive Websites, Thomas Young, Dennis McCarthy, and web marketing specialist, Ray Cameron. Guys, now that we have made the time to write content, which was the last podcast, and if you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to that one first. Can you provide us a few tips on writing content that's going to get conversions and provide a return on the investment for our listeners?
Well, in the previous podcast, I was just thinking of this question that we might get asked by a client, which is, why should I spend the time or the money to get content done? Well, the reason you should do it is because you're going to get a return from that, and that return will come in the form of a conversion. And so what we want to talk about is how to write website content so that it'll drive conversions.
Now, for the people who have skipped ahead, right. What is a conversion?
Yeah, a conversion can be many things on a website. It can be anything from a direct sale to a lead for your sales team, to an email subscribe, to a download, to a visit to the Contact Us page and maybe a phone call or some other type of contact. But a conversion is whatever you think is going to drive a website visitor toward a relationship with your company, toward a sale of some kind. And the content that they see on a website is what's going to drive that. And if you write your content properly and you write it for conversions, you will see the return on the time that you're putting into this. And in fact, I think you'll see a better return for your time and money on the web, on writing website content, than just about any other form of promotion or advertising or marketing. So we think it's critical. And I really think it plays a big role in conversions in a lot of ways. In fact, let me just kind of run through a few of the types of content that can drive conversions. Things like taglines on the home page, headers over your blocks of text. If you're going to have blocks of text, have it in your resources section where people can read a lot of detail. That will drive conversions. Captions on photography. It's something that's rarely used on websites. I think it's a very powerful way of driving conversions. Also, images, graphics, photos, and videos, all of those things, audio, will drive conversions. And it's important to realize that in watching users on websites when we do usability testing, these things happen quickly, and they happen when there is a connection between what the user's looking for and the kind of value they want and what they see on your website. And there's one more component here. What they see on your website has to match very well to what you actually do and actually the kind of company that you are. So when you have that formula working very well, then you're going to have a high conversion rate and you're going to get really good ROI.
So where exactly should people start then?
Well, I was just thinking of a question, and we run into this periodically where when we're talking to our clients, they can't answer the simple question, what does your company do? I mean, they can probably answer it in a long version, but that quick
elevator speech,
and they can't do it. And if you don't know the answer to that, then you're probably going to have a tough time writing copy that converts because you're not even sure what your company's doing.
Yeah, it's almost like there's two parts to that. What does your company do, and who is your company? Mm-hmm. So a lot of times people can answer the question what the company is about, and that's saying what we do. But when you ask the question, what is your company? Or how are you different? Or how do you stand apart and add value against your competitors? That kind of question is more complicated.
I think there's a part 3 to those two questions, and it sounds cynical, but everybody's asking, what's in it for me? What is this website about? What does this company do? And how can they help me with some of the solutions I'm looking for in my life?
Is there a connection between what I'm seeing on this website and what the problem I'm trying to solve? Mm-hmm. and so many websites are so generic in that area. So when you get to the site, you're seeing things like, welcome to our website, or we're a really great company, or innovative solutions is one of my favorite. But there's no connection there. So, I mean, I think it's important to realize that ultimately It's the content on a website that drives user actions, whether it's content on a navigation system, on your homepage. That can either drive it can drive a high or low bounce rate, people leaving the site immediately, or it can drive conversions.
Tom, I think that maybe people are still struggling to make the transition from the printed brochure copy to web copy.
Oh, absolutely. So many websites are brochure copy websites. We've talked about that in the podcast.
Well, there's a difference. There's something that Ray had mentioned that kind of sparked something in my mind, and what I was thinking about was people don't know their elevator speech. And Tom had brought this up in another podcast as far as knowing what your customers think you do or your customers know you do. And I believe that still today there's so many there's so many businesses out there that don't really know what business they're in. They know what they do and what they provide, but their customers have a different idea of what they do, or may buy different services. Oh, I buy from you because you have great service, where the company might be touting technical expertise and might be saying, well, our products are technically the best, but all the customers buy from them because their customer service is best. Well, they should be touting their customer service more than their technical products.
Absolutely. You should be able to look at any web page and see like this swoosh from what do these guys do, how can this help me, and how will I initiate contact with these guys so they can help me.
And I think that's something is definitely being in contact with your customers, asking them, what do I do? What business am I in?
Yeah, ask the customer open-ended questions like, why did you hire us? Why did you choose us over competitors? What did we do that you didn't expect? That sort of thing. Then you'll start to hear the kind of copy or the kind of branding statements that you want to get onto your website. And one of the things I was thinking about as we did the outline for this podcast was where to start and how to really conceptualize this. And my thought was start with your homepage and think about the homepage as being the central point here, because if people don't get past your homepage, then you're not going to get a conversion. So immediately on the homepage, there has to be this connection we're talking about. They understand what you do, it's of value to them, and now they're going to dig deeper into the site. Get away from that generic homepage copy and get into copy that describes who you are and brands your business. I think that a tagline is probably the best way to do that because of how people scan a website, especially how they scan the homepage. If the tagline connects directly, they'll read that, they'll say them at the right place, and they'll quickly move to the navigation system, and then you can start to move them into the conversion. So really, the first conversion you want to do is to say, let's get them past the homepage. Let's not have them bounce right off the homepage.
What's a good example of good taglines? Because that's something somebody could get hung up on forever.
Oh, yeah. Our tagline is "Cool Sites, Hot Returns," and we've actually that has worked pretty well for us. But now we're thinking about taking it to the next level. And we've been asking our clients, what kind of value do we provide for you? Why did you hire us? And what we're hearing is that we're seen as more of a comprehensive resource where we kind of walk people through this process of being successful on the web, kind of like what we do on our podcast. And so we're thinking of changing the tagline to something more along those lines, that, holding your hand to web success, or, something, a variation on that. So if someone comes to our homepage and sees that, they'll say, that's what I need. I need someone to partner with. I need someone to work with me over time so my website will be successful. Then the next thing they'll probably click on is something like the services or about us, and they'll start moving toward contact. That would be an example for us.
And what about writing for the target market?
Well, it's funny how the web, and this is one of the things I love about web marketing, is that being successful on the web is really about being successful in business and being successful in marketing. It's not just this technology that you put out there and people can use it and that sort of thing. You've got to understand your target market. You've got to have a strong business plan, a strong marketing plan that really gets into the head of your target market. And then your website content has to connect with them and communicate to the target market. And that's what will drive people from your homepage into some of the interior pages.
Now, and you can analyze your web stats, and you might find that your target market is not the group of people who's coming to your website. And that's a whole other podcast.
See that all the time. We see that all the time where we see sites with just, they get the wrong kind of traffic. Good examples of that might be wholesale to retail. You've got a wholesale website getting retail traffic. There's a disconnect there, that sort of thing. So you've got to understand the target market and draw the right kind of traffic.
Now, once you kind of have an idea of where to start and you're kind of starting in on the process, well, obviously the next step is really getting the conversions. What types of conversions can we really look at?
Well, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, and we'll post this on the blog, but leads, direct sales, email signups, contact us page visits, all those are examples of conversions. You might have something you download, you might have something people register for. Anything that initiates a contact or the beginning of a relationship with your business is a conversion. And content's going to do that. One of the things that's inspired me recently is this idea of visits to the contact us page as a conversion. Because, we know from usability testing that web users are very deliberate in what they do. They don't just bounce around websites, surfing the site. So if someone hit your Contact Us page, there was an interest in initiating that relationship. So that's a form of a conversion. So now where do we take it from there? How do we get them to actually move through that process?
I think they need to see your conversion at the top right of the page from within the first 2 seconds of visiting the homepage. And that needs to be in the same place on every single page. So as they do dive deeper, if we're successful with good content like Tom was talking about, they'll know exactly how to pull the trigger on every single page. And they'll be so much more likely to just go to that top right area and click that button if they know that it's always there for them.
And give them options. I mean, we've seen in user testing that some people like to call, some people like to email, some people like to do forms, some people hate forms. Some people like to get in their car and go to your office or visit your facility, whatever you're touting.
But some businesses won't let you email either. So forms are
you have to have forms. You got to have a form. So have multiple types of ways to contact you on that Contact Us page, and that'll help with your conversions. Absolutely.
Now, what about as far as conversion points within the content? Because obviously, if you're writing for content and you're talking about from a web point of view, like let's talk about intuitive websites. If you have talking about conversions, and we have an article posted on the blog that talks about conversions, do we have a conversion point in there that we can automatically bounce them to the contact
That's
page?
such a great question, Glenn, because people, with websites getting more and more visual, people have totally underestimated the value of inline links. Those little blue links in the middle of the paragraphs get clicked like crazy. Those have to be there, and those help you with your optimization as well.
That's interesting. I think that you should have multiple conversion points, and we've talked about the links in the content, a standard positioning. We have a website audit that we do, which is a free website audit. That's a conversion point for us. It should also be just right there in your navigation, Contact Us page. And I think it also should be a text link at the bottom of all your key content. Contact us for more information, that sort of thing. And conversion points need to be on every page. Because a conversion, and we've talked about this in other podcasts, is a spontaneous thing. Even for a large high-end ticket item sale. Think of buying a new home. Probably the biggest thing that a consumer will do, right? Well, it can be an impulse to contact the person's website that they're looking at, whether it's a home builder or realtor.
And another type of conversion is getting them to go from small content to medium content to big content. So they might move from a teaser paragraph to a larger article to a PDF that's downloadable. And next thing you know, you're drawing them into your content if it's good.
But most of our clients, I think you guys would agree with me here, is they're looking to do two things. They either want leads or they want sales, and they want interest. They want people coming in saying, "Hey, we're interested in your products or services," and then they start a sales interaction with them, or they want a direct sale through an e-commerce site. So I wanted to just talk briefly about how to generate, or how content generates leads and how content generates sales. And we'll start with leads first. And one thing I want to talk about is what we've seen this year. We're in the middle of a pretty tough recession. It's middle of 2009, September 2009. And it's more difficult now to generate the leads than it used to be on the web. And I think that it's because people are looking for higher level of trust. And I think they're looking to integrate what's happening offline with the website. So you've got to work even harder than you have in the past to generate leads from your site. First of all, if you've got your brand done up front on the homepage and your branding and your content makes sense, your services description has to be really top notch, and it has to be a continuation of what your brand is about. So you've said, this is what we're about, and this is how we help you. And when they get to the services, that's reinforced in more detail.
What would be a good example of that, Tom?
Well, like for us as a business, if we're going to tell our clients that we're going to walk them to website success, then we better have a program that offers that service. And we do. We have monthly consulting sessions where we actually meet with the client every month and help their website be successful. So there has to be a connection between the services and your branding statement. And the services content and description, that's where you can go into detail. I mean, that's where you can really flesh this thing out, because by the time they get into that area, they want to see detail and they want more information.
Not too much.
But I think you organize it so that it's not overwhelming, but let them dig deep if they want to. Use your navigation to let them dig deep. We also recommend to generate leads that you have excellent resources content that positions you as a leader, as an expert in the services you provide. And it doesn't matter if you're providing, high-end financial consulting or if you're washing cars. Whatever it is, this is where you can put tons of content in about how you help people, how the techniques you use are better than competitors, and tips and suggestions, that sort of thing.
And a lot of those things, too, can also be duplicated in print. So they can be duplicated in print articles, and since a lot of magazines, newspapers, all that stuff is online as well, you now have content that can be distributed across the web in multiple publications and linked back to your website.
Right. And I think that's going to generate leads. And it's also a way that your website content helps you convert in ways that you may not be able to track, because, someone's going to they're going to go to your website. They're going to go visit you. They're going to talk to a sales rep. They're going to do all these things before they finally pull the trigger. So you've got to have that coordinated effort. Absolutely.
And what about driving sales? What about that's the big thing. Bottom line, businesses survive because of sales.
Well, and one more point I want to make about leads is the fact that we work with a lot of home builders here in Colorado Springs, and they're great examples of offline and online coordinated activities to drive leads. And we just recently had the Parade of Homes here in Colorado Springs, where the home builders really get to showcase their homes. And it's interesting to see what happened this year, because the homes were less ostentatious, they were more practical, they were more livable because of the recession we're in. But the leads that came from these Parade of Homes activities were really good and were really strong with our clients. And the reason being is that they went to the Parade of Homes. They saw the home that they liked that was affordable. They went to the website. They checked out the company. And then they came back and continued the relationship that they started at the Parade of Homes. So it's another way that a website and content can drive sales. And we know that because we saw a spike in traffic to the site during the Parade of Homes. And we saw an increase in leads. So, the bottom line is driving sales. And our job really, and the website's job, is to generate a lead. So once you've done that, then it's your job to close the sale. I mean, the website has kind of done what it can do. But on an e-commerce site, you actually have a sale there. You have, revenue and dollars are changing hands as sales happen. E-commerce sites also have to start with brand identity. In fact, I would say probably the number one component on an e-commerce site to lead to a conversion is your brand identity on the web and off the web. If you can overcome that hurdle, for example, if people know your business, they understand your brand, they trust you, that's probably the number one thing you can do to drive conversions. From that, we're going to be looking at the specific things you do to promote the products. Things like your photos, your captions, your product descriptions, all of that has to be written for the target market. It needs to be scannable on the web, easy to follow, and it needs to get people excited to move forward. It's almost like if you're going to sell a product, say you're going to sell a leather wallet on the web, you need to cover all the bases. You need to make sure that your product photography is top-notch. You have different angles showing the product and how it's used, and that all your photos have captions that move people toward a purchase. And then have some very detailed product descriptions about how the product's used and all the different variations, how it's taken care of. The more you can do that, not only does it help you in search engines, but it helps you get more conversions.
And with e-commerce, I think you should also make sure there's no barriers between the content and the sale, because with most e-commerce projects we take on, there's something that is annoying the customer that makes them shut down the whole process of making a purchase. So really studying what happens from the time they decide to make a sale to the time they actually purchase this product, and making sure there's no obstacles along the way, and really studying what happens with real users.
Yeah, and, it's funny because I think shopping carts, today are good. I mean, you can get off-the-shelf shopping carts like a Magento or a ShopSite that are really good products, and they've really handled the usability issues that used to be around. But what I think Dennis is saying here is you don't want your content to be a usability issue. You don't want the content people are reading on your website to get them to think, well, I didn't hear them say anything about the leather care for this wallet. I'm going to go somewhere else. That is content that's.
Or how do I take care of this wallet, where they can go to a competitor's website and it says, here's everything to get the maximum life out of your wallet. You might go, hey, if I'm going to spend a hefty chunk of change on this wallet, I'm going to want it to last.
That's right, or a $500 briefcase or something. And so make sure your content is covering all the bases, explaining your products, how they're used, and that content doesn't become a usability issue and actually can drive people away there, mostly because of what you're not saying. Users can be driven away from a conversion because of more of what you're not saying than what you're saying. So keep all those things in mind.
That's another key point. Just looking at users and asking and seeing their reactions to the content, because it is so common to have content that makes people go away. Anti-content.
Yeah, you want to avoid that. So, in a nutshell, I mean, these are the things that are going to drive sales, and keeping that brand in mind is going to be absolutely critical.
So, as we wrap up this podcast, what are some of the key action items for our listeners out there?
Dennis mentioned earlier that when you're writing content, it's a good idea to have your keywords up on the wall in front of you. And I would say, with this, when we're thinking about writing content that converts, what you want to have in front of you along with those keywords is the question, or maybe your statement. I wrote down, who are we? But it's that elevator speech. Remember that elevator speech when you're writing your content. And then the other thing is, what do I want people to do on my website? Have those two things in mind so that when you're writing, you have those two things. You want to keep those things in mind.
Yeah, I can't stress that enough. Know what the user is looking for and help them find it. I mean, absolutely critical. Make sure your brand identity is communicated on your homepage immediately and quickly and easily, and then carry that brand identity throughout the site. So you almost have to do your branding homework first before you start writing the copy. You should have that done. And then I want to stress again, captions on photos. Deep content in the About Us section. We didn't talk as much about the About Us section, but this is another place to reinforce your brand and have some deep content.
That's really a whole podcast, the About Us page.
And we should do that. And then also deep content in your resources section. The resources section is where you're going to be writing every week or every couple weeks to add new content. And then finally, make sure you have conversion points on every page. Perhaps do some as Dennis said, some basic user testing, just to see if people can find your conversion points, if they make sense. But make sure you have conversion points on every page.
Well, thank you, Tom. Ray, Dennis, thanks for being here. Folks, we'll see you at the next Intuitive Websites Internet Marketing Podcast. This has been an Intuitive Websites Internet Marketing Podcast. For more information and to see all the available podcasts and much more, visit intuitiveblog.com.